Greetings everybody, Redbeard here for the September 28th, 2016 edition of the Midweek Update. There's a 50% chance that tomorrow I'll wake up having been transformed into a lobster. There's also a 50% chance that this weekend TNA Wrestling will present Bound for Glory. Yeah, it's looking that bad. Number 5 story of the week this week is Chael Sonnen's insane Vince McMahon story, which of course if it's an insane Vince McMahon story, it probably means it's 100% true. This is a kind of crazy thing that came out around the promotion of UFC 203 whenever CM Punk was of course involved with the card there. We all know how that went, but this was a story that Sonnen regaled as part of some of the media that was around that event. And it goes somewhat like you would expect a story involving Vince McMahon to go in dealing with a competitor. Apparently back in 2005, when both the UFC program, The Ultimate Fighter, and Raw were on Spike TV, there was a conversation that happened between Dana White and Vince McMahon. And essentially it was McMahon telling Dana to kind of back off pursuit of some of the advertisers who were really going for some of the same programming there. Of course, you're talking about a combat sport type scenario to where you've got competitors in the advertising spectrum who are both looking at the same target audience, I should say. And of course, they're both interested in appealing to those same audiences. And on the specific timeline of this event happening, you had The Ultimate Fighter was starting to creep up and up and up and up and up in terms of its interest, and Raw was just kind of, hanging in the same area there. There wasn't a whole lot going on at that point in time for WWE. So the story goes that McMahon tried to get Dana White to back off. White told him, we're just on the same network. I'm not doing anything in terms of trying to get advertisers to come one way or the other. That then thereafter, at one of the pay-per-views, McMahon contacted UFC announcer Mike Goldberg, or excuse me, I should say play-by-play man Mike Goldberg, and essentially told him, here's $100,000. I'll wire it to you. This conversation never took place. No show the event. Don't do anything other than just backing away and just kind of disappear. And it was amazing because of the fact that in the context of the story, to have someone come across and offer $100,000 to a competitor just sounds so unreal. But at the same time, this is McMahon. This is his competitive nature. And this is something that sounds completely plausible in my opinion. Of course, Goldberg did not take the money, according to Sonnen anyway. He went to Dana White and told him, hey, guess what? This is what he's offering me to walk away from you right now. And at that point in time, evidently Dana White not only offered him an extension on his contract, but offered him upwards of, some people have said, $500,000 for a new contract. And also changed the pay structure going forward for a lot of his talent, because even now you've got some guys on the undercard who are not making that much money, but at that point in time you had guys who were making $15,000, $20,000 in main event status for winning a match. Now it's bukus more than that. So here again, it's one of these stories where it would be totally implausible and totally far-fetched if not for the fact that it involves the people it does, namely Vince McMahon and other people from the sports promotion world. So it's a fun story, one of these things that'll definitely go down in history and will probably, hopefully, be fleshed out in someone's book at some point in time. Number 4 story of the week is that it's been announced that the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic will be returning for 2016. This is somewhat of a surprise, I'll say, because of some of the relationship issues that have gone on between the Rhodes family and WWE. Of course, we all know by now that Dustin, the older brother of the two Dust brothers, as we'll refer to them, is still with the company, still on their good graces and whatnot. However, Cody, of course, and his wife have not exactly been in the fold for some things that have transpired creatively with WWE. But at the same time, it would appear as though Dusty and his legacy will continue on as part of this particular scenario in this tournament. The first couple of rounds have already been taped. They've already been a part of some of the recent NXT tapings. We've not been paying attention to those other than the fact that they have been announced, and we do know some of the teams that are going to be participating in that as well. You're going to have the Revival, you're going to have TM61, a couple of other big tag teams that are involved with NXT right now, of course, are going to be associated with it as well. But the fact of the matter is there's going to be 16 teams in this. And that is kind of crazy because I'm in my own mind trying to determine who could they involve that's going to make up a 16-team bracket. There's a lot that they could work with, of course, but you just kind of wonder who's it going to be. Are we going to see Team DIY? Are we going to see some more guys from the Cruiserweight division come together as tag teams? Are we going to see new combinations of talent? And in that scenario, we definitely are, because we've seen already, or at least we've heard of the debut of the Sanity faction, which is Eric Young and a few other guys from Developmental who have been brought together in what looks like a pretty exciting combination of talent there. So they've got that going on, and a lot will be transpiring in terms of the development of this tournament. The interesting thing about this is that it's in a very old school feel, in that there is no number one contendership, there is no challenge to the tag team champions, because here again we already mentioned that Revival is involved with this, but it's just a good old-fashioned, here you get a trophy at the end type situation. So we'll definitely be paying attention to what happens with this, because the 2015 edition was a fantastic thing. You saw a lot of great competition come out of that. Of course, the winners wound up being Samoa Joe and Finn Balor, and we know how the two of those guys have had their careers develop since that point in time. So we're looking forward to seeing where this goes, and it's got a little ways to get to its fruition, but the finals, we understand, will be taking place on November 19th at the NXT TakeOver Toronto special. So definitely want to be paying attention to that whenever it comes around. And the number 3 story of the week is that the WWE ratings are continuing a downward trend. This is somewhat not surprising given the time of year. This is a trend that does happen because of the fact that on Monday nights, of course, you're having Raw compete with the NFL. It just so happens that young men 18 to 34 like to watch football, probably more so than they enjoy watching wrestling these days. But you do see typically that type of slide happen. However, this is a slide that's been a little bit more significant than it has been in years past. And people, of course, are trying to figure out, well, what's going on? What's leading to this happening? Is this because of the product? Is this because of anyone in particular? Unfortunately, you have pundits who want to say, okay, well, this is Kevin Owens' fault. He's the one who's carrying the brand now in terms of the new Universal Championship. This is his problem. He's this indie guy that no one's interested in. And I think that's a terrible thing to say, because the fact that he's done literally everything he can to pick up the ball and run with it, and I think he's done a great job. Of course, I'm a fan of his, so you would expect me to say that, but at the same time, I think you'd have a really difficult time criticizing him legitimately and saying that he hasn't done well with the opportunities that he's been afforded. The programming to me has been pretty good overall. We've not really been lacking in terms of things that have been interesting in terms of the matches or in terms of the creative direction that things are going, because you're still sort of faced with this power struggle type angle where you've got general managers and the authority figures like Stephanie McMahon involved with the week-to-week broadcast, but it hasn't been bad. So there's no real reason to think of that as a culprit for why the ratings are continuing to drop. One thing that we have to consider nowadays, and I don't think that a lot of the wrestling news media has been quick to point this out, is the fact that people are now absorbing this content in very non-traditional methods, and TV ratings are analyzed with very traditional data gathering tools. What I'm talking about here is the fact that you're talking about people who are traditionally sitting at home watching via a set-top box or whatever else. Whereas nowadays, a lot of people don't even do that. A lot of people nowadays, like myself, they would sooner stream content via some type of a provider like the WWE Network, like Hulu, like Netflix, whatever else, as opposed to having to say, okay, well, I've got to be in front of my TV from 8 p.m. until 11 p.m. every Monday. They want to go in, get what they're interested in, and get gone. It's just a sort of a trade-off of the busy lives that we lead. Unfortunately, traditional TV ratings methods for tracking that type of data don't calculate in that sort of viewership. So we're going to have to get to a point to where we don't necessarily rely on this as a tool for saying, okay, the business is here or the business is here. We're going to have to say, okay, this is what TV ratings are, this is what our YouTube numbers are, I don't know what type of tracking we have with the WWE Network because they do their own thing, but it's going to be some combination of things that you can then present to advertisers, because that's what we're talking about here ultimately. We're talking about the ability of the business to maintain its solvency, and then say, okay, we're still doing good, plenty of people are still watching us. That's what it's going to take ultimately. So we can't focus on these things. It is an indicator somewhat of what's going on, but it's more, in my opinion, a true analysis of trends in the marketplace overall in terms of how people are getting their content these days. So it's something to be concerned with for sure, the ratings numbers, but I don't think it's that big of a deal at this point in time anyway. And the number 2 story of the week is our preview for the TNA Bound for Glory pay-per-view. And yeah, we're going to go ahead and do this, even though we're going to add some commentary to the end of the story that'll further shore up what we said in the opening of this program. But we'll run through the card here real quick before we get to that. The main event of the program is scheduled to be a defense of the TNA World Heavyweight Championship, where Bobby Lashley will defend against Ethan Carter III. The match that I think everybody is actually interested in on this card, though, at least I'm interested in seeing, is the Tag Team Championship match, which is going to be some kind of a no DQ war scenario between Decay, which is the Tag Team Champion, and then the Broken Hardys. I think this is going to be a crazy thing. If there was possibly a way to send off TNA into a blazing glory, this would probably be the match to do it, but they're going to be involved in that scenario. Then you have a couple of other matches that are involving championships. The first ever Impact, it's not TNA, it's the Impact Grand Champion will be declared between Aaron Rex and Drew Galloway. I think Galloway's been dealing with a bit of an injury here the past couple of weeks, so I don't know how involved he'll be with that match, but we'll see what happens there. And then you have the Knockouts Championship, where Maria will be defending against Gail Kim. Gail Kim, of course, here recently inducted into the TNA Hall of Fame. The other matches that they've got on the card that they've announced, at least at this point in time, will be a gauntlet match for the Bound for Glory series. Apparently, whoever wins this match will get some type of a contract to challenge any of the champions. Furthermore, after the match is over, you've got Tyrus, Grado, Cody Rhodes, or just Cody, can't call him Cody Rhodes in the context of TNA, Robbie E., Jesse Goddard, Baron Dax, Rockstar Spud, and 3 additional talents to be named will be involved in that particular contest. The other 2 remaining matches are that we've got a match between Moose and Mike Bennett, and then DJ Zema Ion will be involved with someone. They haven't apparently announced who that's going to be, though. The bigger story here is the fact that there may not even be a Bound for Glory pay-per-view. The story that's been relayed by Dave Meltzer and several other major news outlets as far as pro wrestling is concerned is that TNA is out of money. TNA has no cash apparently to put on this show, short of a miracle happening between now and what's being reported is Friday morning, and we tape this show at midday on Wednesday, so at this point they've got essentially a day and a half to make something happen. Short of that happening, there may not be a BFG, and for that matter, there may not be a TNA. It's apparently that bad at this point in time. The company has said, from what Meltzer and others have reported, to be in millions and millions of dollars in debt. It's crazy to think that a company that's been around for this long, that's had TV for this long, in multiple countries, put on pay-per-views, run live shows, all this stuff, and yet they're now essentially going to die if no one comes up and says, okay, well, I'll buy you as cheap as I possibly can. And that's the other part of this, is that they're so far in debt, it's being said that what the company may sell for might not cover the actual debt that they have at this point in time. It's a crazy scenario. I hate it all the way around because, there are people who in the past said that, well, TNA just needs to go away. TNA is just terrible. It's a terrible thing to even put that out there because of the fact that you have suddenly the number 2 company in the world, and we're still going to call them that because there's really no one else that would be in that ballpark, in my opinion. But you have the number 2 company in the world just vanish, and every opportunity to earn a living, to work for that company, or something similar, go with it. It's terrible that it's come to this. I certainly hope that something happens between here and there to salvage what's left of what can happen between all parties involved, but we just don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. So we're hoping that BFG goes off without a hitch. But by this time next week, there may not be a TNA. We just don't know. Last but certainly not least is our number one story of the week, and that is our reaction to the WWE Clash of Champions pay-per-view. This was a pretty good show overall, strong showing by most everybody involved. I would say that you definitely had the top of the card there. It was pretty stacked in terms of the overall performances from guys like Rusev and Roman Reigns, and of course Seth Rollins and Kevin Owens. But the real highlight of the show, in my opinion, was the women's match. Holy cow, those girls, I mean, Sasha Banks, Charlotte and Bayley, they continue to just go out there every time and show people how talented they are and what kind of ability they have. Remarkable match, great scenario, fantastic storytelling from all three. It was a match that featured an escalation of violence, really drew you in, and just was fantastic from top to bottom. If you don't see anything else off the show, I would definitely say that that is the match you should see. Not real sure, we had the three of them involved there, and Dana Brooke is kind of there. They're hoping that she gets some sort of a rub off of Charlotte. They're probably going towards some scenario in the future where she and Charlotte feud, but I don't think Dana Brooke has the talent yet to be able to pull that off, unfortunately. Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. Maybe someone will recognize that and she'll wind up getting an opportunity back in NXT to further develop herself, but whatever. That's definitely a conversation for a different time. As we said, the pay-per-view overall was pretty good. The women's match was outstanding. The reason why we say it's pretty good is because we've gotten to a point, and I hate to say this because as big of a fan of wrestling as I am, we've gotten to a point to where we're saturated now with wrestling. We have essentially either a WWE or a Lucha Underground or something happening every night of the week. And it's so much now, especially when it comes to WWE programming, that you've either got a network special, a pay-per-view, a 3-hour Raw, a 2-hour SmackDown, something happening every week. And it's just to a point where it's like, okay, I can't keep up with it all. And more so than that, you've got a situation developing where pay-per-views just don't seem that big of a deal anymore. Clash of Champions, for example. You'd think with a name like Clash of Champions that it would be really all about the titles and focusing on, even in some scenarios, maybe one set of champions challenging another set of champions. But that doesn't happen, of course. Not with a brand split anyway. But it's, as we mentioned, saturation, and it's a point where, how much value are the members of the audience placing on these shows now? You have to question that because, it's not a question of quality. We're not talking about, are these guys able to do their jobs? We're talking about just the amount thereof. Because, you can sit there and you can engorge yourself on pizza and prime rib and all this great stuff that you enjoy. But then, if you've eaten the same thing for 10 days straight, it doesn't matter what it is, at some point in time, you're going to get sick of it. It just happens. It's the nature of everything. So it's going to be interesting here as the time continues to develop between now and, the coming months, maybe starting next year as we get into the WrestleMania season and whatnot. What they do moving forward. Are they going to try to continue to diversify by bringing things in like the Cruiserweight division, doing different stuff with the existing talent, or are we going to continue to somewhat spin our wheels here with the Randy Ortons and the Bray Wyatts and the feuds that seem to go on forever and ever and never really culminate in anything meaningful? So, one thing we don't have to worry about, though, in terms of there being meaning to it, is our local scene, though, because guess what? Local scene continues to be on fire here in the Carolinas. I'll go ahead and say the Carolinas are on fire. We see some guys on YouTube who do these shows and they always act so animated, and I just can't do that. But that's as animated as you'll get from me anyway. And we'll go ahead on that note and mention that there are 12 shows happening between the Georgia area and the Carolinas this weekend that we're aware of anyway. So we'll go ahead and roll those posters, and then here in a moment we'll be back to wrap up the show. our rundown of the events that are coming your way this weekend. If you're a wrestler, a promoter, or in some way involved with the wrestling promotion, and you didn't see your poster in that part of the show, it's because we didn't know about it. We do our best to peruse social media to keep abreast of what's happening in this part of the world, but we do miss things. That said, if you're involved with the promotion and you would like your information posted here on the weekly midweek update program or on the Rasslin with Redbeard Facebook page, please send it to us. We have multiple ways you can contact us, either here through YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, email. All those good old-fashioned channels are there for you to get in contact with me. Drop us a line, send us your poster, information about your show. Be glad to get it out there for you. It's a big part of what we do here on Rasslin with Redbeard is promoting the local talent and shows. Appreciate you guys tuning in. We're hoping to have some highlight videos and possibly even some full match clips or full match videos, I should say, from the big time wrestling event we attended this past weekend up in Spartanburg, South Carolina. Those should be up on the channel hopefully sometime later this week. If not, they will be there early next week. So we do appreciate you guys tuning in, and if you want to be a really knowledgeable person as to when we have content like that on the channel, go ahead and subscribe. That way you'll know first when we've done something like upload new content like those match videos and whatnot. Do appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll see you next week.